A bunch of people were leaving and they won't reschedule that.
Are able to just run home.
It's not there yet. That's, well, I need to just go. I need a place for stuff. I do.
All right, welcome everybody. Before we get started with our agenda, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the tragedy that happened at Robb Elementary School in Texas last week. Events like these force us to take a hard look at our own security measures, mental health supports, and crisis plans. When it comes to our kids, we can never do enough to keep them safe. We will have a discussion about school safety and security at our next board meeting on Thursday, June 16th. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, I would like a motion to approve the agenda for June 2nd, 2022 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Doug Ziegemeier and Adam, right? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up we have patron comments. During patron comments, residents of the district and staff members are invited to address the Board of Education on concerning issues related to the school district. Speakers are called forward in the order of sign-up, and each speaker has 3 minutes to make their remarks. Please remember that only one speaker is allowed at the podium at a time, and combining time or giving your time to someone else is not permitted. The board appreciates that you have taken the time to come this evening, and we value both your input and perspective. I would like to remind everyone that we expect the speakers will remain civil and respectful when giving remarks. If anyone fails to comply with board policies, regulations, and rules, we reserve the right to cut those 3 minutes short. For your convenience, our 3-minute time clock is ready, and we welcome Lisa Eldridge.
Hi, my name is Lisa Eldridge. I am a parent as well. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. As an employee of the district, I have kids at 3 different schools in the district. My concern is the ability of the administration of every school to keep kids safe. Of course, in light of the recent school shootings, this is most important on most parents and school staff's minds. As important as it is, daily safety is also a huge concern. Kids being bullied and attacked by classmates is a daily concern. I mean, if you can't keep a child safe from classmates, how are you going to keep them safe in an active shooter situation? My child was personally let down by the administration at his school when not enough was done to keep him safe. The administration needs to take these kinds of attacks, once done by classmates, more seriously. I'm also curious at what kind of training the school staff members go through when it comes to an active shooter drill. I have a friend who owns a Krav Maga gym. I spoke with him and he is willing to do an active shooter seminar for any staff member who is interested. I don't know the cost of this, but if you can get in touch with me, I'd be happy to share the information.
Next up, we have Christopher Brooks.
Hey everyone, before I start, my compliments to whoever wrote the Prop S update tonight. Really nice, lots of numbers on it, very easy to follow, so keep it up. But the theme I want to address in my comments here is the district's continued payment for memberships in and training by various third-party groups, while not monitoring the effects of that training or doing cost-benefit analysis of these costs. At best, this may be just like a gym membership where you sign up in January and quit in June. But at worst, these can have negative effects on staff morale and unity as well as on classroom instruction. For example, recently the board approved another 1-year membership in the Ed Plus Cooperative. When asked about the benefits received from this cooperative membership, the administration did not provide specifics, even though Regulation 3165, up for revision tonight, requires the district to annually produce such a cost-benefit analysis. Board members, did you get one? At the last board meeting, the board approved training for an individual in this district to get certified in cultural proficiency. What does that mean? Well, the website of the consulting firm doesn't give you much information. It references a California organization, the Center for Culturally Proficient Educational Practice, which also doesn't say much about their content, but they do have some great stuff on their website. They have a talk about co-decolonization as spiritual activism. That sounds useful. And a book that they published called Improving Student Achievement Through the Creation of Relationships, a Critical Race Theory Counter Story. This sounds good. Further, the local trainer who will be teaching our staff member cultural proficiency has a new book called Leading Change Through the Lens of Cultural Proficiency, an Equitable Approach to Race and Social Class. Every word of this book is steeped in Freirean Marxist theory. Even better, the author of this book dedicates an entire chapter to critical race theory and intersectionality. Folks, I know the board administration have told us that there is no CRT professional development. CRT is not taught in the schools, so why are we paying for a teacher to attend it? Another example is on our agenda tonight for another year in Character Plus. When you look into this organization, you prominently see the Equity and Justice Academy, previously Gateway to Change mentioned. What's in this academy? I don't know, but the director of this academy has a fascinating Twitter feed. She posted a picture of a previous EJ ACE team that said, "Always a privilege to be able to learn with Dr. Fields. Thank you for pushing us to think about our practices and ways in which we uphold white supremacy. A great day designing transformation for kids." This sounds kind of like an ideology, not education. Why are we paying an organization that supports and promotes this? Why are we sending our students and teachers there? The bottom line is your job, folks, to look into these organizations, to vet them, and scrutinize how the money's being spent. Our money and time should only be spent on organizations that give training with proven value, not those that push an agenda. Thank you.
Next up, we have Harry Harris.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to start by thanking Lisa for coming up here. I was really touched and moved by what she had to say. I did want to, first of all, congratulate everybody on Pride Month. I want to thank all of our students and our students and staff and teachers who are celebrating this month. I've gotten to know a lot of them, and I really appreciate them living their authentic life. So I really do appreciate that. Last month I came and asked that the board start to investigate getting a DEI position for this district. I talked about how other districts have that, and I'm still here talking about it, and I'll continue to talk about it because it's something that we definitely need. But I was very disturbed afterwards, after I made my comments, hearing about concerns about cultural competency. I was hearing the word CRT being thrown about, and as a person of color, as a minority in a majority district, to hear these terms thrown around, to hear the derogatory statements that were made, upset me. They really upset me. And in talking with others, I know it upset them too. Look, we need to stop with all of this divisiveness. We're all here to try to make the district better, to improve everything for our students. And we can't deny that there's a lot of problems out there. We can't deny it. We see it every day. We need somebody in a position who can help us get past some of these. And we also need leadership that's not going to feed into these talking points and dog whistling that somehow diversity and addressing these issues is bad. Cultural competency, hadn't really heard about it, did some investigation on it. Bottom line is, we're all different. And we've got to learn about some of those differences. And that's why we're doing these sorts of things. And I know, as I'm talking to some teachers who've been in this district for 20 years and they're leaving, and they're citing some of these things as why they're leaving. I had one teacher who told me, she was asked at an interview, what actions have you taken to support diversity? What does social justice mean to you? They asked her that in a local district, and they're going there. And they appreciate being asked those things. We have to work towards better for all of our kids and this district. And that includes all of our kids, not just the kids we want to pick and choose. What's good for my kid might not be good for your kid, but we still have to have those resources here. And I really ask of you all and everybody else, stop the divisiveness. Thanks.
Next up, we have Julia McDonald.
Way to go, Erie. Wow. Good evening. Can we take a moment to reflect, process, and congratulate ourselves for getting through it? Challenges? Yes. Celebrations? Yes. I hope everyone can get a little rest and relaxation in. I'm proud of my friend Harry Harris, the man that just spoke before me, to be one of the only black people in a room full of white people. I validate that. I reflect on that. I do not know what that is like, but I am willing to listen, learn, and grow my perspective. At some schools, this is how our students of color feel. It's time we address the fact that our students need teachers that look like them. The work of the Equity Committee needs to continue in the next school year, and I'm confident Dr. Rompus will take that baton to continue the pursuit of making FHSD a more equitable place. We often hear the saying, attract and retain highly qualified teachers. The addition of an equity position that Harry's talking about would help ensure that we are doing just that. This is a position that we are seeing surrounding school districts add, and it's needed in Francis Howell. Adding another chief is costly. Maybe we can create this position internally. We need conversation, then action steps. Our students deserve it. I would love to be part of the Equity Committee. Elementary teachers are anticipating the approval of recess pairs tonight. This, among other factors that influence staff morale, were negotiated for. I am thankful for my teacher union in Francis Howell. The negotiations team reported a smooth and positive process overall, and that is a celebration. FHEA is the voice of staff members, and I am proud to be part of that. I could not imagine where we would be as a district without that union advocacy. Another celebration in my world as a Francis Howell teacher is Reading Recovery. Reading Recovery is a one-on-one reading intervention for first grade students, and our district has had it since 1997. Year after year, I am blown away by our successful data, and despite being pulled away from my reading students throughout the year to sub, Francis Howell Reading Recovery teachers were still able to celebrate the fact that we brought so many struggling readers to grade level and beyond. This happens year after year, and I am proud of that. FHSD staff, whatever your celebration is today, shout it out. We need to hear all the awesome things going on in our district. I see you, and I send you a virtual high five. Happy Pride Month to all, and well wishes for a great summer break. Thank you.
Next up, we have Katie Rash.
Well, I agree with Julian. I would like to congratulate all of the teachers and support staff in the district for getting through a good year, and to thank my children's teachers for everything that they have done. So just want to start with that. I'd like to thank the administration for following up on a question that I had about a book called The Court of Mist and Fury. I understand that that book has been removed from our district library, so thank you for that. I'm sure that the district can speak more to what the points are and the considerations were for removing that book, but I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous myself because what I'm about to say is going to be hard. So I would encourage parents at home to possibly not allow your children to listen to what I'm about to say. I'm going to say things as discreetly as possible. I learned about a book today. I'm a person who follows the different parent groups on books because I believe that there are certain books that are not necessarily appropriate for our children in the schools. And I learned about a book today. It's called Flamer by Mike Curato. It's in Barnwell Middle School, and it's also in several high schools in our district. I want to say that I agree that the experiences of LGBTQ individuals should be represented in our literature in our schools. I agree with that. I also agree that we should not have use of slurs and hateful speaking in our schools. Hopefully we can communicate that message to our children without having to model use of slurs to our children, because in this book there are a lot of slurs that are used, and it's very sad to see. I would tell my children, you never say these hateful things to anyone. You might disagree with them, but you don't say those hateful things to them, okay? So I agree, we don't talk like that. But also, there are some things in here like, I brought a Mountain Dew bottle. This is very disturbing. In this book, page 131, got this from the public library, there's a group of young men relieving themselves sexually into a soda bottle. And then whoever's the loser of the game has to drink out of it.
Wow.
This is in Barnwell Middle School Library. It also shows shower scenes. It doesn't show the genitalia, but it shows shower scenes. It shows a young man watching pornography. His
Thank you.
father's
Your
porn.
time is up.
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have FHEA.
Good evening, Board of Education, District Administration, parents, patrons, and colleagues. I'm Raquel Vasquez, and I'm honored to be speaking tonight as the Negotiations Chair for FHEA, who represents educators in our district. In mid-May, our Teachers Association stepped out presuming positive intentions and hoping for a collaborative, problem-solving negotiation so that we could work with the district administration to support our educators and our students. I want to personally thank my negotiations team, the district admin team, federal facilitator Jim Albano, and our 3 board observers, Doug Ziegemeyer and Adam Bertrand, who attended all 3 meetings, and Randy Cook, who was able to be with us for one of those days. In those 20 hours, we were able to address many new concerns, such as our elementary working conditions, which led to the revised staffing plan that you all will be voting on about recess Paris tonight. We were able to sustain things that we worked on last year when we were unable to ratify our agreement, like provisions for nursing mothers and revising lane changes to include some of our colleagues who had earned their education master's as a second master's degree. We were also able to restore all but one item from the decades-long legacy of teamwork that has made FHSD a coveted district in which to learn and teach. Our goal has always been to have a seat at the table in order to collaborate and create the best learning environment for our students. And the support provided by our full-time release of our FHEA president is still needed by our members. We know that you still have the opportunity to amend this agreement and put back the support our teachers and our students have had for decades. But we also know that our educators deserve to have the guarantees provided by a ratified closure document. So we recommended that our members ratify this agreement, and they overwhelmingly did. We are energized by this year's negotiations and are determined to move forward in a positive way as we work together to do what's best for all the stakeholders in Francis Howell. We hope that the FHSD board will approve this closure document and continue this new spirit of collaboration that truly embodies the words, better together. Thank you.
Next up, we have FISPA.
Good evening, Board of Education, Cabinet, Administration, and community members. My name is Seren Henderson, and I am the newly installed president for Francis Howell Education Support Professional Association, or FISPA. We represent paras, interpreters, secretaries, nurses, maintenance, grounds, and of course, custodians. Last week, we brought the tentative agreement language for the Memorandum of Understanding to our members, and we are glad to report they voted unanimously to accept it. We ask that the board votes later tonight to pass it as well. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have our Prop S update.
Good evening, board. I will let Jane. Thank you, Jane. So I don't have a full board report tonight for you guys. I wanted to take this meeting a little differently. Take an opportunity to look at some financial information. This is something that has not been sent before to the board. It's a new document that was created by myself, and will help with the Prop S group. So I thought it was a good time to reset. I thought that we have our big project well underway right now. In working with our Prop S group, the financial information I think was still a little confusing. There was a lot of questions being asked at board meetings. So this is my first attempt to meet some of those questions and start to develop more transparency of what's actually going on with Prop S. So it's not a final document. You can see it's even watermarked. It says draft copy. So I'm happy to tweak this, but I think it's a step in the right direction, and I hope the board agrees. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. And then we can answer any questions you guys have. So really this document is trying to achieve three things. It's trying to tell the board and the public what projects are currently under contract, how much money we have to spend overall, and what projects are still left to do. This document does not prioritize those projects. That is something that we can talk about down later on or in the future. It is just trying to give a snapshot of where we are. So on the first page, I call it packages previously awarded. These are all things that have been previously approved by the board. We have our Fairmont Portable Classroom Project, obviously our Francis Hall North, District Security, 801. You can notice that the new Union and new DLC, which is their packages 7B and 8B, there's a 0 by them. Those packages were actually moved into package 19B, which is 801 Corporate, but in an effort to just show those, I thought it was important to have those on the document so everyone reminds and can understand that. Mr. Klein and I do separate projects between building and maintenance. Maintenance is a lot more complicated, I will say. These are the maintenance projects that have been completed or are partially completed, listed there under tab D1. And then finally you get the project management, design fees, and soft costs. I want the board to have an understanding of what these is. There's been some questions before about this. We don't put design, soft costs, FF&E, testing, things like that within our project. So I'll pick on Francis Hall North. If you were to look at what SM Wilson's contract is, you would see $164,723. But obviously there's a lot more costs that go into Francis Hall North. There's the design work that has to be done, our testing, potential furnitures, my costs, all those things have to be paid for. So we lump those into one number under design, project management, design fees, and soft costs. So we have that, we track that. I'm sure there's going to be more information that's asked for by the board on that. We'll be happy to give that. That is for all the Prop S work. We have by no means spent all that money, not even close to it, but we have to have some kind of allowance or a space allocated for all of the design stuff that's going to have to happen. So that's why you see there, and it is under previously awarded projects. So that's a little confusing how we do it, but I wanted to take a moment to explain it. That gives us a total of $218 million to date that we either will incur or have approved to go forward with, okay? So this is the, one more page, Jay, go down. Bond proceeds. So Kevin can jump in anytime I say something wrong here. We have the original Prop S funds of $243,887 that was approved by the taxpayer. We have bond premium sales number 1 for $8 million and change, and then we have bond premium sale number 2 for $27 million and change. So all of those numbers together is what I would deem revenue, or money we have at our disposal. That comes to a total cost of just under $280 million. The boxes below are summary sheets that we can come back to, but I will explain them while we're on this page. You can see there bond proceeds amount to about $279 million. We have projects awarded currently at $218 million, which leaves remaining funds of $61 million. I'm using big numbers, obviously, but $61 million remaining. The next two documents talk about what will the work cost in the future. So I'm going to skip over that box. We'll come back to it. Jane, you can go to the next page, please. Okay. So on the left, what we have is Prop S original cost estimates. If you went back to the Prop S page or matrix that was actually sent out when it was approved, you would see these numbers there. So you would see Henderson, $8 million, new addition. This is a very simple version of that sheet, so you might have to do some digging to get some of these, but that is what they add up to. So on the left in the highlighted tabs, you see what was actually approved. Projected market change, this is my educated guess of where we currently stand in our market and what these projects will cost in today's dollars. I do not know what they will cost. We will not know until we bid them. But in my opinion, it's better to have a number there than a question mark. So I'm taking that approach. I do use some different data points to try to establish these numbers. You can notice things like the tennis courts. I'm only using a market change of 19.5%. That's a concrete job. It doesn't have a lot of steel in it. It has no steel in it. I don't think that's going to have as much of a market impact on maybe a new project like Henderson would. So I will adjust these as I see things change month to month, but it is a educated guess is the word I will use. So this is just what we call building packages. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but I think you should be somewhat familiar in seeing these. These are Prop S building projects. Again, building projects, maintenance projects, different things. If you go to the next page, Jane. Here we have the maintenance projects. Now the maintenance projects on the Prop S list are very extensive. They take up 7 to 8 pages. Mr. Supple and I try to come up with a way to categorize them into elementary, middle, high school, and other buildings, along with some parentheses around them of HVAC, building envelope, so on and so forth. So we've done our best to do that. Again, on the left, you will see the Prop S original cost amounts. So if you were, I'm going to pick on just the first item. LCR means life cycle replacement. So if you were to word LCR parking lot and playground surfaces, if you were to add up all of the elementary schools in the phase 1 Prop S, you would get to $1.5 million. That's how I did that math. I then am again putting the market change number on that, and then I'm trying to come up with a revised cost estimate for those projects. So that is what I'm doing. These are, again, the percentage is up for negotiation. It is my best guess on the information that I have, but I'm going to say it over and over again. We will not know what this stuff costs until we bid these projects out. You go back to the second page, Jane. Sorry, I'm making you jump around. If you go now to the last box, we'll see future work in today's dollars. So this is the information being pulled from the third and fourth page. We begin to see that our building projects in today's dollars, we believe will be $50 million. We begin to see that our maintenance projects in today's dollars, $149 million. So in the end, what I'm here to tell you and depress you about is we have $200 million worth of projects to complete, and we have $61 million to do it. So that is what this page says. Again, things could get cheaper, things could get more expensive, these numbers can change. I am not prioritizing these projects at all. I'm not here tonight to tell you what should go first or second or third. I think that's another discussion. I'm just trying to provide the board with a snapshot of where we are and where I think we're going. I would fully anticipate this document at some point going onto the website, obviously, and becoming a document that's updated on a monthly basis with some new information as we take things and continuing to grow into something that we all agree with is a good tool for everyone to use. So that's what I had to say. If I missed anything over here, happy to answer any questions.
Board, does anyone have any comments, questions?
I just have one question. The transportation building, this building, can you point me to where that is on this list?
It is under package 5B bus garage on the 3rd page.
Okay, future package.
Yeah. 3 million. And that, I'm glad you actually brought that up, Mr. Cook, because I want to say a couple things about transportation, because it's another one of those where some money was moved. So the original budget for transportation in your original Prop S was $4 million. $1 million of that was relocated to package 19B. And that's how it became $3 million, and then we're putting things on it to make it to 4.5, if that makes sense. So there was some internal juggling when they bought 801 of some of these packages and what made sense to build 801. So it was originally 4, we moved it back to 3 on this sheet, but that's what that note right there implies. So, and keep in mind that that's the entire transportation center, not just necessarily the renovation of the admin building. That would include potentially fueling stations, bus garages, whatever, parking lot renovations, all in for everything they would potentially need down the road. So, did that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Sure.
All right. Thanks for all the information. It's really great. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
And I know you said this was later, so one of the things I did want to ask is maybe comment on was, obviously we can't do everything that's left to do.
Yep.
So have we talked about how we're going to prioritize that? Is that a future conversation? Is that something the board's going to be involved in, or just administration? Are we going to approve that prioritization? How do you see that going, or have we even gotten that far to have those discussions? I know there's information we're waiting on.
Yeah, I'm going to pass that over to these guys in a second. I want to say a couple things. I do want to, Mr. Bertrand, I think it is important to remember we all, I think, agreed and liked the format at the last meeting. So no matter what anyone, I believe the intention is, no matter what group decides what goes next, that will go before the board before any decision is officially made to start the design portion of it, which I think is a good step that we all like. I will defer to if anyone over here wants to comment on what they think the next steps would be on making a priority list.
Thanks, Chairman. I do think that last month, last meeting, we tried to present a framework for how we would approve projects on a go-forward basis. And so that would involve work first with the design team, and they certainly have input from the facilities committee. So those professionals who are engaged in the work will take a look at what's most critical of the remaining projects and make some recommendations. Then a proposal will be brought forward so that the board would have an opportunity to provide input. Yes, we agree that Project 18C is something that we should move forward with at this time. And then we will begin, really to spend some of the design costs to get it ready for bid, and then the opportunity to bring that back, of course, to the board once the bids have been out on the street and tabulated, to say we decided 18C was our next priority project. We estimated the costs at X. The actual costs are going to be Y. Do we have authority to proceed? And so there will be 2 steps where the board has an opportunity to provide input, but some of that initial work will be done by professionals or architects, our administrative staff, our facilities personnel to help us prioritize some of that work. But before any significant dollars are spent on design, the board has an opportunity to provide input and guidance on that work.
Mr. Supple, I just want to add to that too. One of the things we're discussing is getting feedback from the stakeholders. So understanding we've heard a lot of concern from our voters and other stakeholders around the current funds we have available, the projects that are still remaining. As part of the survey that we pushed out, we've talked about doing some roundtables this summer to engage patrons who are interested in providing some input, really looking, one, at the projects that are still remaining, and then also how could they be ranked. just to get that feedback from our stakeholders, get some of that information as well through a survey for people who would like to provide the information that way. And then to look at that information through the lens of these committees to really do the work. And I think that the emphasis there is coming back to the board with recommendations and different options, but trying to get input. I think we're all disappointed right now that we cannot do all of the work that we originally intended to do, or at least not on the timetable that we originally had set out. But getting some input about how we do move forward will be important, just so that we can all move beyond where we have been over the last 2 years with these projects and be positive about the remaining work moving forward and the great things they'll do for our students and for the district.
Board, any other questions and comments? I do have one.
Yes.
Just to reiterate, when you say revised cost estimate, that is just an educated guess, correct? And we will not know until we bid out.
If you call me educated, yes, that's correct. Yes, that is right. So there are, I think we talked about this almost a year ago. We were talking about Franceville North. There are many publications that exist in my industry that talk about what inflation is and what construction is, whether it's the AGC, which is the Association of General Contractors. They do stuff. CNR magazine does stuff. I try to look at those things. I try to track those things. I try to come up with an average cost to use as, you see two numbers that stick out, 65.2 and 59.35. But I think it's also important to note that some of these things we do know what they cost. For example, the turf fields, we have actually gotten prices on. So there's no inflation on that because we know pretty much what those bids are. So it's just as important. I'm trying to project the work, but also look at the scope of the work to get a better understanding. A new building has a completely different inflation rate than fixing some tennis courts, if you can imagine. So that's one of the efforts that's trying to make that. But yes, these are mine and my alone educated guesses of what things might cost in the future.
And Mrs. Lang, I'd say that Mr. Bettler's underselling himself just a little bit. One of the advantages of working with Atlas Building Groups is that they not only have access to national data that's being published, but the company's actively involved in construction projects across the country, so they have a firsthand knowledge of what's actually happening on similar type projects being built. It may not be a school building, but we know that school buildings use brick and steel and lumber, and they have an idea of what the prices are when those things are happening. So we're able to tap into the knowledge base that Atlas brings from the work that they do across the country, and Jeremy factors that in as well as some of the national data. So we really appreciate the expertise that he brings and that Atlas provides in support to arriving at better cost estimates for these projects.
And you are not alone, believe me. Go ahead, you have a question.
So just one quick question, it's probably for Mr. Supple. Just curious on the bond premiums. How is that recorded from a financial perspective? Does that go in the capital or is that somewhere else?
It goes, all proceeds from a bond issue need to go into the capital fund, so they're recorded in our capital fund.
With respect to cost estimates, I understand exactly what these are. Eventually we will prioritize a list and we will hire an architect or appropriate professionals to further those designs. Is it our practice to ask for an opinion of probable construction costs once the design is complete before it is bid? Is that?
Yes, the architects and I typically work on I will say it even more firmly. You will get an opinion of probable costs when we bring the project to this board before we start the design on it. If you remember at the last meeting, we did show something like that for transportation. That would be our intention. And the intent is to take that from this number to the architects looking a little more at actually what we're going to build. So looking at the square foot cost, looking at the site work, kind of trying to get it more honed in, and then bidding it, and the hope is that is somewhat close. So yeah, and then I would actually be happy to give the board estimates during design too, if that's what they would ask for. That's not a big deal. But yeah, we'll try to keep, make it a little more finite is probably the right word.
Anything else, board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next up we have our first reading of the budget. Mr. Supple, do you have anything to add to this?
Mrs. Lang, we had an opportunity at the last meeting to share a lot of information about the broad parameters for next year's budget. A copy of that PowerPoint is included again as an attachment to this meeting, so if you were not able to attend the last meeting or don't have access easily to those materials, they're provided here again. I would say that the budget message provides a encapsulated way in a couple of pages to take a look at, where we're placing our emphasis in the coming year in terms of the resources available and how those are being distributed. So very happy to be able to bring the budget to the board for this first reading. The entire document is there. We also excerpted just the financial section so that you can look through just that piece of it. But I think in many ways, it is helping us to really move forward. I do want to just take a moment just to reiterate a couple of things that I shared in the presentation last month, but just so that they don't get lost. There are necessarily some assumptions that are made in terms of providing the estimates for particularly revenue in this budget. We assume that the projections that DESE has provided us for sales tax revenue next year are going to come to fruition. But there are forces beyond our control. If the nation were to enter into a recession, that could have an impact on sales tax revenue, which would impact what we eventually actually collect. So there are some assumptions that this budget is based upon. Again, the financial institution tax. We didn't assume that we'd get $6.5 million like we did this year, but we also didn't assume we'd get $65,000. That is an assumption upon which this budget is based. We make utilization of some of the one-time revenues from the federal ESSER funds. I think those have been incorporated in a very thoughtful way, not to make it difficult to free ourselves from commitments once that revenue is gone. But again, the budget includes the utilization of some of the federal revenue. The other thing I'll mention again is that the salary budget, I think we did a much better job this year of coming to the salary budget. But at the time that we were pulling the budget together, we had not concluded negotiations with all of our employee groups. Tonight, the board has an agenda item in front of it that was not part of our decision making when Mrs. Ryleman and I were planning our salary budget. And so we will need to bring some revisions to the board or Mrs. Hawk will need to bring some revisions to the board in November when she brings the revised budget that will incorporate some of those updates. That's a natural course of events within the school district. But just as the board is approving the budget, it is a budget and it is based on a set of assumptions that I think have substantial validity behind them, but they are a set of assumptions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but look forward to approval on June 16th.
Board, any comments, questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Supple. Next up, board, I would like a motion to approve the consent agenda for June 2nd, 2022 as presented.
So moved.
Mrs. Stingledge and Mr. Lang. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Board, I would like a motion to approve the 6th, 7th, 8th grade PE curriculum second reading as presented. Mr. Ziegemeyer and Mr. Lean. Any discussion on this, board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Board, I would like a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lang and Ms. Stiglich. Any discussion, board?
So I have a question about these. I sent it in late today regarding these vendor agreements, multi-year. I haven't checked my email, but do you have any comments on that for anyone interested?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cook. The question was, we have two preferred vendor agreements that are in front of the board this evening, and market conditions were such that we only received one response to those. I will share with you that at the next meeting, as it turns out, at our next meeting, we have a number of preferred vendor agreements that are coming back for reconsideration. So we will take a look at our preferred vendor agreements on an annual basis, and I've already made a note to myself to talk to Mr. Klein so that, like for the flooring bid, that might be something that as we examine what the performance has been with the company, the market may have changed significantly enough that it would be worthwhile to bring that back for bid. But we do take a look at the preferred vendor agreements on an annual basis. And as I said, next month we have a list of those that were previously approved that will be reapproved, if you will, brought back to the board for that.
So, do these agreements, if we're entering into a 3-year agreement, maybe agreement is not the right word, but I would assume that we were under contract basically to use a certain provider for 3 years, and to come back in a year would be to break an agreement. Is our language, is that not accurate?
We asked them to provide pricing for 3 years and to show us what the escalation would be, but we're not bound to use them for every project. So if we were to do some repair work at a particular school building, if we were to recarpet 1 or 2 classrooms, it makes total sense to have a preferred vendor agreement. If we were going to replace the flooring in all of the hallways at Central High School, I think we'd bid that out again. So we're not, I think it provides a great deal of flexibility to the district. We have guaranteed prices for some of the normal maintenance type work that gets done that allows us to proceed quickly with getting those done. And when we have a larger scale project, we have complete flexibility to bid that out so that we aren't bound to just the preferred vendor agreement pricing, understanding that the volume of another project might drive a better cost for us.
Hey Kevin, I have a question. So with the preferred vendor, I know we talked about this in years past, but have we ever thought about putting a dollar amount on what would be used under the preferred vendor rather than going out to bid? So, a dollar amount on that.
Sure. We've done that previously with some of our like the asphalt, that if it's beyond so many square feet, then that would be bid. If it's under that amount, it would be something that we would just use the preferred vendor agreement. We actually found that was not, it maybe hamstrung us a little bit. So you make an estimate of what a small scale project would be, and then it turns out that we need to do some repairs fairly quickly at pick a school, Hollenbeck Middle School, and the size of the job is bigger than what you put in the preferred vendor agreement. And if you have a vendor who's already given you great pricing, I think you ought to have the flexibility to do that. So I would say that I would prefer that the CFO and the Director of Facilities have some flexibility in determining when it makes the most sense to bid something out as opposed to using the preferred vendor status. Because it becomes difficult let's pick a number, 10,000 cubic feet of asphalt, cubic yards, I guess, of asphalt. That sounds like that would be great, and then you have a repair job at Hollenbeck and actually takes 12,000 cubic yards, and does it really make sense to bid that out? The difference isn't that great. But by the same token, if we found that there's a significant movement in oil prices and, maybe knock on wood, something magic happens and the price of oil comes way down, we might determine that size of a project that size, or maybe even smaller, would be advantageous to bid that out. So I think the greater flexibility for the district is to give that control to the CFO and to the Director of Facilities. But we're open to direction from the board if they ask us to do something different.
Well, my example, or what I was thinking was, I could see a preferred vendor for, replacing a water heater or something. But sometimes I think in the past there's been preferred vendors where we've replaced, cooling towers or air handling units or rooftop units where, I guess it could go either way.
Mr. Klein and I have had some of those conversations. The cooling tower is a good example because the dollar amount is high, but oftentimes it's that's one piece of a total HVAC system, and it becomes difficult to get competitive bids because really you need it has to be done in a particular way. And what you're really paying for is the mechanical side of that, and we do have vendors who've worked with us very successfully. But that is something that we'll continue to take into consideration when those large dollar projects come forward, whether there's advantage to competitively bidding those as opposed to just using a preferred vendor agreement. But again, my recommendation would be that the CFO and the Director of Facilities have authority to make those determinations and bring a recommendation to the board.
Any other comments, board? Questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Board, I would like a motion to approve the purchase over $7,500 for the Character Plus membership renewal as presented.
So moved. Second.
Chad Lang and Patrick Lane. Any discussion, board? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Board, I would like a motion to approve the 2022-23 pay increases and salary schedule as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Simpkins.
Thank you. Board, we are bringing forward the schedule for our occupational therapists and physical therapists to you this evening. We paused to bring this to you until tonight as our teacher salary schedule is also being presented. This employee group kind of straddles both salary schedules as we are working to transition our occupational and physical therapist over to all being paid by our teacher salary schedule. So it was important to us to know what that teacher salary schedule would look like to be consistent for this employee group. And so we do hope that you will approve our recommendation for the salary schedule.
Board, any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Board, I would like a motion to approve the FHEA closure document as presented.
So moved. Second.
Doug Ziegemeyer and Adam Trant. Ms. Simpkins.
Thank you. I want to echo what Raquel said today. Administration enjoyed the conversation with FHEA. We were pleased with the conversation and the tone of the room. It was very positive and collaborative, and we just really did appreciate all of the conversation. Also, just want to thank, it's a great time to thank all of our teachers as they're ending their school year, and just hope that you see the value and the support that we have for you and appreciate all of the hard work that you do. So we do recommend that the board approve the agreement as presented to you this evening.
Board, any comments or questions?
I'll just say to the FHEA, whoever prepared this comparison document showing the old closure document and the new one that we worked on, appreciate that. It was very helpful, especially as someone who hadn't delved into that before. It was much appreciated by me. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will take a brief break to sign the closure documents.
That I'm so happy to have. My hair. I know.
Oh, right. Yeah. I like exercise. So maybe have that.
We went tomorrow, like most days.
Right. And then they process. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Hey, hang it in there. Oh, yeah. I mean, better it out. Wrap it up. Yeah. Well, it's not.
With Michael.
Right, that could be.
We had Donna sandwiches. That was us.
Probably the
And then so here, she didn't mean it was just a competition. You didn't call 6 or 7. So I was like,
And she's like, well, the point and I said, what's the
It's like our library.
Well, yeah, I don't like this, but I'm never anything after this. It's hard to Boy,
He's still trying to get a job on a political campaign, but in the meantime, he's driving for DoorDash.
Hey, that's big
So I was
now.
like, you gotta make some money.
Between that and Shipt and all those, yeah. Or Instacart.
It's the gig economy, man. Literally, he filled out the application, and 2 hours later, he did his first shift.
Wow.
I was like, this is wild. Like, we've never talked to a person. They just like, they look at your driver's license, they make sure it's you, they do a quick background check, and you're good to go.
Kind of scary too.
Yeah, but he's just driving through, you know.
Right.
My mom was like, oh, he needs to be careful. That's really scary. And I was like, it's totally realistic. If people DoorDash like me, I wait until the person leaves. And then I scurry out of my house like a little rat and grab my food.
But he's a pretty good driver and likes driving around.
Yeah, he's going to learn and he's better already.
Thank you, bye.
All right. Okay, are we ready? All right. All right, board, I would like a motion to approve the additional 15.2 support staff FTE to reflect an increase in the staffing plan to include the positions of recess assistants and recess paraprofessional.
Second.
Randy Cook and Adam Bertrand. Ms. Simpkins.
Thank you. After much conversation with FHEA in regards to some of the working conditions and schedules of our elementary teachers, this was an idea, a solution to some of those problems. You'll remember that our 21-22 school year staffing plan included the elimination of recess assistants and paraprofessionals as one of the measures to meet the financial goals of the district when we were reducing staff. Our administrators, our teachers in the buildings had worked really hard to make that work, trying multiple different schedules and options. And after living that reality for a year, we have come to hear that there just isn't a great solution without the support of those recess paraprofessionals. Many of our surrounding school districts utilize recess paraprofessionals to support recess and support teachers, and we just kept coming back to that being the best solution to solve the concerns that we were discussing. So we are recommending the addition of these positions to our staffing plan for next year. It is absolutely our goal to post these positions this summer and get every one of them filled, but as you know, it is a very tight labor market, and there is some concern that we'll have all of them filled. So we'll be working with our buildings and putting some measures in place until we can get all 40 positions filled as quickly as possible.
Board, any questions, comments?
Lisa, those recess teachers that were displaced and or lost their position, will they be a priority when we look into those positions?
Yes, many of them stayed employed with the district, whether they moved into cafeteria aide positions, substitute teaching positions. Some of them became full-time paraprofessionals, so we'll work with them and have some conversation with them if they're interested in returning back to that part-time position.
I'll just make a quick comment. I'm super ecstatic having 2 kids in elementary and talking and hearing with teachers and seeing the impact. I'm so glad we were able to bring this back. I'm sure that the teachers will be as well.
Okay. I will also add that I'm super excited about this as well. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
President Lynn, can I just add to that? The board is only asked to approve an updated bell schedule for the district in years where there's a change. And so we had not brought one this year, not anticipating a change. Changing this now, bringing recess pairs back, we will no longer have the early release Wednesday at the elementary level. That also has implications that we change the middle school and high school bell schedules for this year by a few minutes to accommodate transportation, getting them home before elementary. So we will be bringing an updated bell schedule to you for the next board meeting so that we can communicate that final information to our parents and our teachers as soon as possible.
Appreciate it. All right, board, I would like a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding and revised paraprofessional BSS interpreter salary schedule as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have Doug Ziegemeyer and Adam.
Anticipating your approval of our staffing request today, we have worked in advance with FISPA, our support staff group, and worked to identify where the recess pairs would be placed on the salary schedule. So we appreciate their quick work in coming back to the table and having conversation with us and coming to that agreement. And so we hope that you will approve the MOU that's before you and the revised schedule that had previously been approved as part of the FISPA agreement, but now reflects the recess pairs and assistants back on that schedule in pay grade 8 and pay grade 10. If that is approved, Ms. Lang, we do need for you just to take either a small break now or later to sign that MOU before we leave this evening.
Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next up, we have superintendent comments.
Thank you, Ms. Lang. As we wrapped up our school this school year today, we've had lots of conversations again about how difficult this year has been. And I think it's always a good time to ask everyone, remind everyone, we hope that everyone can take this summer to step away, get away from your email, get away from your work, spend time with your family and loved ones, spend time actually relaxing and getting refreshed after, and again, we say this was a tough year. We know it wasn't just this year. This has been a couple of insanely difficult years for everyone, and we hope that this summer brings a sense of normalcy and a sense of getting back to the things you enjoy, so everyone can come back in the fall relaxed and ready to tackle what hopefully will be a much more normal year.
Okay, next up we have Board of Education comments request.
I have some questions or comments, I guess, for the superintendent. The last few weeks, there's been a number of walkouts, protests, whatever you want to call them, at two different high schools. Can you talk a little bit about what the district, what our protocol there is when we learn about those in advance? There's been a number of concerns throughout the community about that. So.
Sure, I would just say the first thing is we recognize that individuals do have a right to protest, but the expectation is that it's peaceful and safe. And so depending on the nature of what administrators in those buildings hear, often they will hear about it ahead of time. They may reach out to the students that are leading that effort just to have some discussion about how to channel that into something safe and productive. And so, each time it's going to depend on exactly what's happening, what it is that's coming up, and the discussions they can have with those students. And so they will do their best to plan for that and keep it manageable, keep it safe, and keep it productive. And I hesitate to give exact details because that is going to depend on each situation as far as what that looks like. But they will work to make sure that the building and staff are prepared to work with that, find a safe place for students to gather. We recognize that students leaving campus becomes a whole other safety issue, things like that. Depending on the nature of the protest, it could get volatile. We want to avoid those kinds of things. So administration and staff in those buildings will work with the students involved to make it productive and keep it safe.
Do we allow any other community members, parents, to participate in these walkouts or protests on school property?
I think when it comes to anything that we're conducting on school property, we have visitor protocols that we follow and things like that. So I'd have to look into any specific concerns about engagement in any given protest.
Assuming these are allowed, for lack of a better term, assuming they don't disrupt the school day and the order of the general order of the school, I think it's incumbent on us to set some rules about this over the coming months, because I fear that this will become a problem over the next number of months or years. I don't think anyone's interested in walkouts every week or every Tuesday or anything like that. That's not what the school's for. So once or twice a year when national things happen, it's understandable that people are going to express their concerns. I understand that, but I do think there needs to be some general guardrails, if you will, around this sort of a thing. So.
Sure, and I can add that student protests are not a brand new thing. I mean, they've been happening for years and years, and it hasn't. And administration and staff have been working with students on this for years and years, and it hasn't just evolved into some super common thing that happens. So I don't know that I see a concern that would happen. As far as disruptions to school, the very nature of a protest will have some disruption, but the administration and staff of those buildings works to contain that and keep it at a level that's both productive for what the students are trying to voice their concerns about, as well as enabling the school day to be as normal as possible.
Anyone else? Mr. Lee?
I had the honor with most of the board here, or all of the board, to attend the union graduation. It was very well done. It was exciting to see 110 graduates walk across the stage. So another success story for our students. I was offered again the opportunity to participate in negotiations with our educational support counselors. Raquel and her team did a wonderful job. Administration did a wonderful job. I thought it was a nice conversation, even though when the conversation got difficult, it was still a nice conversation and resolutions were met throughout the day. And I'd like to thank the district for their response, I guess that would be Jen, to the recent shootings in Texas and other areas to help calm our parents, grandparents, and our community. Patron that spoke this evening, I would love to speak with you, or probably someone in central office. We are doing things, but like you, I'm scared because these schools are our local schools. They look just like Francis House schools when they come on the news. So I appreciate and understand your concern, and the district is doing things. The teachers and staff are trained. And how do we better prepare? Well, as Mary said earlier, we are going to present in the next couple of weeks of our safety plan throughout the district, and we're always fine-tuning that, and of course we look forward to input from the community. Thank you.
I just want to kind of echo what Patrick had to say. I was able to participate in the negotiations for FHEA, and I thought they were very productive in the negotiations. I appreciate the organization on both sides. So just wanted to kind of put that out there that it was a positive communication and negotiations from both sides as just kind of an observer. Also wanted to take the time and thank teachers, staff, administrators, because obviously this was the last day of school. So it was definitely a tough year and one that I think we can still celebrate and say it was a success. So I'm happy to say that. And then just kind of a brief mention on having a conversation around security next board meeting. Just wanted to kind of put some thought out there that I don't know how we handle it in regards to having open conversations, but I just want to maybe take a look at if we do have detailed conversations about security, that maybe it's not recorded, or if it's not recorded or live stream, if there's some way to prohibit any kind of recording, if there's any kind of detailed information that we're putting out there. I wouldn't like that to be something that's recorded that people can look up about security information in the district. So I don't know how our workarounds are with that, if we're just talking in general terms, or if we do get into specifics, or if we're able to not live stream or at least not record that conversation, because I wouldn't want a bad actor to be able to look that information up and poke holes in any kind of flaws our system might have. Hopefully there isn't any, but we live in a real world.
Any other questions, comments? I would like to put a reminder out there that we have our stakeholder survey that closes at midnight tomorrow. So make sure you take that. And happy summer, everyone. And next up, we have our employee benefit plans change workshop. Take a couple minute break if needed, anyone? All right, let's go.
Thank you, Mrs. Lang. I'd like to start first by just thanking the members of the committee. The names are listed up here. I especially appreciate that we had 2 board members who were participating in the conversations, but also just want to acknowledge that several of the people there have been on the Employee Insurance Committee for a number of years. So they bring some great expertise and context to our discussions, and I appreciate the time that they spend outside of their other things to work on finding ways to continue to provide great benefits for our employees. These were the areas where we really focused this year. A different subset of our insurance coverages are out for bid every year. So this year it was the dental HMO, family dental, we usually have an annual renewal, our vision coverage, and our life and disability coverage. This is just an example to show the board that we do solicit a lot of bids from various companies. You can see for dental and vision and life, the number of responses that were submitted and the number of firms that were contacted. Again, this is a breakdown just of the dental HMO plans. This information is available. I don't intend to go over this particular sheet, but we did have our incumbent provide a response, as well as Aetna and United Healthcare. As we talked about the responses, we saw that there was no increased renewal from Cigna. We know that we've had some problems reported to us by participants that it's very difficult to schedule a provider, and sometimes you'll wait and you'll find a dentist and get an appointment scheduled, and it's a couple months out, and you get ready to go to the dentist and you get notified that that dentist has dropped out of the plan, and so you have to start the whole process over again. We talked about maybe considering a buy-up for the dental HMO, or eliminating that buy-up, the higher level of dental HMO plan, and encouraging people to shift to our PPO plan. And there would be some additional costs to participants for us to do that. So that was really the conversation about dental HMO. And then on the PPO plan, which is a self-funded plan administered through Aetna, we considered increasing the maximum plan benefit from $1,500 to $1,750. Our plan our reserve in that plan is sufficient enough to accommodate that, and it has a relatively minimal impact on the overall plan, and it would provide some additional benefit. Of course, all medical services, dental included, are increasing, and this would give an opportunity for people to have some coverage beyond just the typical 6-month cleaning. So the recommendation for the dental plan would be to remain with the dental HMO with Cigna. It's a 0% renewal for 36 months. We would keep both of our current dental HMO options. We are going to provide a disclaimer in our open enrollment materials to help our plan members understand that there are some issues that we're aware of with dental HMO. We don't have any control over that, but if you're selecting a plan just based on the premium, we want to make sure that we're providing some context for that. In terms of family dental, I have reached out to them, our broker has reached out to them. We've not received a renewal from them yet. Some of the information that will be presented later is based on our current rates, not any renewal that we might receive. We've done our best, and I am hopeful that I'll be able to provide an update to the board at the June 16th meeting. And then on the Aetna dental, the recommendation would be to increase that annual maximum benefit to $1,750. For next year, we are encouraging people to take a look at the dental plans, and we may consider eliminating one or more of our plans. A lot of people enjoy family dental. They provide some unique services, very early hours, very late hours, orthodontia, the way that it's covered, et cetera, et cetera. But we do have increasing problems with them, evidenced by here I am on June 2nd, after we've made repeated attempts I still don't have a renewal quote from them. It becomes a little difficult to work with a company that's so independent that they operate on their own timeline. In our dental HMO plans, we just continue to struggle with that, whether that's a reasonable thing to offer for our employees, knowing that people may have made that election, they're locked into it for the year, they try to find a dentist, they finally get an appointment, that guy cancels, that goes on, and they end up going a year without really having any dental service. So we will take a look at how we might add some benefits to compensate for the elimination of either the dental HMO plan or family dental, and that might be taking our current PPO plan and having that as kind of the first tier, and then having a buy-up option that might include some orthodontia benefit in it, or even coverage for implants. And so there would be an increased premium for that. So we would be able to provide the same level of services, but in a different format. But those are things that the insurance committee next year will take a look at. But I wanted to plant the seeds with the board that would be something that we're considering. In terms of vision, again, IMED is our incumbent. We did have some other submissions, but they really weren't competitive. We focused mainly on the second alternative that they provided to us. It includes an enhanced benefit and includes a fixed copay on progressive lenses. As noted here, that almost 43% of our members who access the vision program have progressive lenses, and so this would be a good benefit for them. Staying with IMED assures that there's no disruption, and we actually have a decrease in our current rates even with the enhanced benefits. Life insurance. We did ask vendors to bid on basic life, voluntary life, short-term disability, and long-term disability separately. But really the administration of those programs takes place together, and so we really have to look at the whole when we're evaluating what's the best solution for the district. So in terms of basic life, MetLife is our current carrier, and then we had proposals from Lincoln Financial, New York Life, and Hartford. MetLife came back with a 147% increase in rates, so it really wasn't something that we would consider, so we took a look at the other proposals. Voluntary life, again, MetLife is our current carrier, and we again had proposals from Lincoln, New York Life, and Hartford. In terms of short-term disability, again, MetLife is our incumbent, with Lincoln, New York, and Hartford also providing proposals. Similar situation, of course, for long-term disability. So as we took a look at our disability insurance, Lincoln Financial was overall the most competitive, and they offer some administrative efficiencies. We have had some issues with claim filing and so forth. We did take a look in terms of short-term disability, whether self-funding that was an option because of some of the challenges that we've had with the short-term disability benefit. But we found that after investigation that really wasn't a good fit. Lincoln Financial quoted two ways, original rates and a different set of rates. The original rates would have reduced the rates for the largest percentage of our enrolled population, but those who were youngest in the program and oldest in the program would have seen an increase. And then the same would be true for long-term disability, that the original rates that they quoted would have reduced the rates for the largest segment of the population, but the youngest and oldest would have had an increase. So our recommendations are to move to Lincoln Financial by moving to them for basic life. We have an almost 8% decrease in the rate, which is guaranteed for 36 months. For voluntary life, we will move to Lincoln Financial, but we'll stick with the best and final offer rates, not the original quote. And those are the same rates for the various age tiers as we currently have in place. And so that, again, would be for 36 months. Short-term disability, Lincoln Financial, there's a 20% decrease in the rates, which is guaranteed for 36 months. And then for long-term disability, again, Lincoln Financial, using their best and final offer, which the rates are the same as what we currently have with MetLife, and those are guaranteed for 36 months. So now we'll take a look at our self-funded medical plans. We had a lot of conversation about the high plan. Enrollment has declined in that plan over the years as people have become accustomed to and recognize the advantages, particularly of the consumer-driven plan. The premiums for that plan are significantly higher, and while the level of benefits is higher, it is only slightly higher. The committee did ask for some examples, and I'd like to walk through one of these, and then we can take a look at that. So we took a look at one event. And so for each of the plans, you can see for our consumer-driven plan, the out-of-pocket maximum is $2,300. For the base plan, it's $2,000. For the high plan, $1,500. We calculated a cost for having a baby, prenatal care and through delivery and so forth. That's $12,700. You take a look at, I'll just walk through these. CDH, so $12,700. The deductible for CDH is $2,300, or the out-of-pocket maximum. You do have $1,000 that the board, this is individual only, you do have $1,000 that the board provides as a contribution to your health savings account, which can help offset some of that $2,300. So actually your out-of-pocket cost could be about $1,300. Of course, the individual has the opportunity to pay that $1,000 and hold on to that HSA money, which is what many of our plan members do. In the base plan, again, the out-of-pocket max is $2,000. The costs are the same. There is an exclusion there of $30, so the costs are $2,030. There's no premium for the individual only in either the consumer-driven or the base plan, and so their cost would be $2,030. In the high plan, the difference there really becomes when we get down to the premium. An individual only is paying $1,656 annually in premium in order to be in the high plan. And so for the same procedure, their total cost, when you consider the premium and their out-of-pocket expense, is $3,200 compared to $2,000 in the base plan and as low as $1,300 in the consumer-driven plan. We took a look at something else, a simple fracture. The same idea, the costs are less. The high plan, your total out-of-pocket considering premiums is almost a little over $1,900 versus $760 or $1,300. If you take a look at it in the family, the analysis is the same, the costs are the same up above, but the premiums are different, so there is a premium cost to plan participants for family coverage. For the CDH, that's $3,228, so their out-of-pocket becomes $4,500 and change. For the base plan, that's $7,000 in annual premium, so they have a little over $9,000 of expense. But in the high plan, $14,256 in premium, so their out-of-pocket cost is $15,000, almost $16,000. We believe that a number of the individuals who are in the high plan have been in it for a long time. They haven't really taken the time to analyze the numbers, and maybe they've not had any of the events that lead to that, but we do think that they are experiencing a lot of out-of-pocket costs in terms of the premiums that they're paying for that plan, with not a lot of additional benefit coming to them as a result. So these are limited examples, and I'm sure that there are others that would prove, maybe a slightly different case. But the basic point we're making is that we have a traditional indemnity plan with our base plan, and we have a consumer-driven plan, and the committee felt that those two options provide enough choice to our employees, and that continuing to offer the high plan is actually a disservice to some of our employees because they end up paying a tremendous amount in premium and they're not getting a tremendous amount of value. Again, the out-of-pocket maximum for the high plan is $1,500. For the base plan, it's $2,000. That's only $500. The difference in premium is $7,000. They're paying $7,000 to save $500 on out-of-pocket. And so our recommendation would be to eliminate the high plan as an offering for the 22-23 plan year. The base plan is still there, so those who don't feel comfortable with the consumer-driven plan do have an option for a kind of traditional indemnity plan. We don't think that elimination of the high plan is going to have a huge impact on our funding. But we do think that the opportunity to move people from the high plan to either the base or the consumer-driven will potentially result in lower overall costs to the plan. So we don't think it'll have a big impact on funding, and we think it will maybe help lower the overall cost for the plan. We're going to take now a look at our medical plan. Every year we take a look at what our projected reserve balance is at the end of the year, what funding has come in, and so we have about $31,500,000 of available funding. We take a look then at what our projected expenses are going to be, a little over $28 million in expense. $4 million is a required reserve, so $32.5 million is where we need to be, leaves a gap of $942,000. So how do we close that? We have to adjust our premium rates to drive a little bit more premium, and correspondingly the board contribution adjusted the same way. So it changes at a little bit different rate. So a 3.9% increase in our premium rates generates the $942,000 that we need. If we take a look at our premiums now, you can see the column for the current year, 21-22, and what the column is for 22-23. These won't be exact 3.9% increases because I asked our consultant to try to make them even dollars. It just makes a lot more sense for people to understand it than to have some plans that end in 40 cents, and 50 cents, and 10 cents. It's confusing. So they're not, strictly speaking, 3.9%, but overall a 3.9% increase in our premium rates. District contributions, you can see we provide a full contribution, and there are some people who work part-time and get a half contribution. And so those would also increase by 3.9%. And so you can see that for an individual only, it's currently $695, and that will change to $722. This slide was put together when we were still considering the high plan, but you'll see that we've eliminated that as we go forward. So in terms of the out-of-pocket examples, for an individual only in either the consumer-driven or the base plan with various combinations of dental and vision. For consumer-driven, there's no out-of-pocket for the individual. And in the base plan, it actually shows a slight decrease. That's a little bit misleading because that's based on family dental. Family dental hasn't given me their renewal. If there's an increase in the family dental rates, those numbers would change, but probably not significantly. And certainly within the base plan, there are at least two combinations that employees could choose. No out-of-pocket expense for the base plan. For family, we provide a different level of contribution, but the premiums are also higher. So for the consumer-driven plan, the monthly difference would be in the $10 range, and you can see the annual difference somewhere in $120 range. For the base plan, it's about $22 or about $270 annually for family coverage. So our recommendations would be to remain with the dental HMO with Cigna, maintain both options, include a disclaimer. Hopefully I will bring family dental renewal. Our Aetna dental will increase the maximum benefit to $1,750. We'll use IMEV alternate 2 with the enhanced benefits. There's no disruption and a decrease in our overall rates. Our life plans would all move to Lincoln Financial with either the same rates or decreases in rates for the various coverages that are shown there. And then in medical, we would eliminate the high plan as an offering for next plan year. We'd increase the employee premiums by 3.9% and the board contribution by 3.9%. be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Kevin, by eliminating the high plan pre-existing conditions, those staff members that are in the high plan presently, such as pregnancy, will they just slide into a new plan next school year?
Yeah, employees have the opportunity to change plans every year. There would be no exclusion for pre-existing conditions.
Great.
They're a member of our plan. They can choose any plan they want.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Supple, maybe I'll help you with this one. I keep hearing rumors, rumblings that the district is trying to take away benefits from the employees. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that may be and entail?
Sure. I think that the comments are probably coming from conversations that I had with the insurance committee, and then we had those through discussions with each of the employee groups as we went through negotiations. And that is, our current board policy is written around the base plan, and that the board's contribution is determined based on individual only coverage for the base plan, the low dental, and vision. And a majority of our people are in the consumer-driven plan. And we're now basing the determination of the board's contribution on a plan that not everybody participates in. I just think it's time for us to take a look at whether there's a better way for us to approach that. The other part of that is that we would like to be able to more tightly couple decisions about the board's contribution towards health insurance with employee negotiations, because those are bread and butter issues. And so we really can't make a determination about premiums until we get to about this time in the plan, in the calendar year, because our plan year starts in October, and nobody's going to rate our premiums in November. It's too far out. They need closer to renewal to do that. And so those discussions have been disjointed for a number of years, and we would have conversations with the board and make a recommendation to you and approve a closure agreement with our various employee groups, and then I'd come to you in June and tell you, oh, by the way, we're going to spend another $1 million on insurance. And I think that those conversations ought to be more tightly coupled. And there's a possibility that if we rethink how we approach the determination of what the board contribution is going to be, we could more tightly link that to employee negotiations, so that when we're talking about compensation, which would include the benefit plan, those things can happen at the same time. The other piece of it is we've had a lot of conversation about the other topic that we've discussed has been the contribution methodology for the health savings account contribution that we make. Currently, that is made in one lump sum on October the 10th. And while it's not, I don't want to overstate the case, but we do have some people who stay until October 12th and then quit, and they take their $1,000 or $2,000 with them. I would like to investigate approaching the health savings account contribution on a periodic basis. It would make the most sense from a administrative position to just have an equal dollar amount on every paycheck, so that by the time you get through your cycle with whatever your pay cycle is, you would have received the entire contribution for the year. But I do think that there's some benefit to the district in not letting dollars walk out for people who are no longer associated with the district. But moreover, I think we'd be better able to administer that. Just in thinking in terms of cash flow, in addition to the payroll that we have on October 10th, there's a couple $1 million that we make contributions to the health savings account. And that's the time of the year when our cash reserves are at the lowest point. So if we're able to redistribute how we pay for the health savings account contribution, it may ease our cash flow a little bit, which would help us save money overall by not having to borrow funds. So with each of our employee groups, we've had an opportunity to have conversations. Our agreement was not to make any changes for the 2022-23 plan year, but to take the time in the coming months to have these conversations with our employee groups so that they can help us arrive at some solutions that could be implemented for the 23-24 plan year. So it's not our intention to reduce benefits for employees, but I think it is time to examine those two aspects of what we're doing and to maybe take a different approach to how we're doing it. So provide the same high level of benefits for our employees, continue to provide a board contribution, continue to provide a contribution to the health savings account, but maybe take a different approach to how we either calculate that or distribute that in order to bring a little more rationality to that work.
I don't recall if I read it in the budget or in this presentation, but I thought I read somewhere that it was typical that the board and the employee would split the costs of increases, and I see that the recommendation here is for the board to cover the entire 3.9%. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that was made?
The premiums are increasing 3.9%, so employees are spending more of their board contribution. Their buying power is being changed. So I don't think that the board is the way that the board would shoulder the entire cost would be if we kept premiums the same, and then the only change we made was to increase the board's contribution. So the way that our self-funded plan works is that we give employees a selection of benefits, and there's a dollar amount that's made available to them, and they have to make a selection of what they're going to use. And in order to fund the plan, they have to select those benefits. So if we don't increase the premium, we're actually failing to fund the plan. So if I held my premiums flat, people could buy the same insurance and they wouldn't be putting they wouldn't spend as much of the board contribution, so they wouldn't be putting as much into the reserve account, which is how we get to our funding level. So those two things moving in tandem, if the premiums go up and the board's contribution goes up by the same amount, that's not the board funding the whole thing. It's just the mechanism for us to pass through the premium increase. Employees are spending more of their board contribution to buy the insurance coverages as they want, which is what's funding that program. And so we do provide an increase in that rate, but it's roughly a 50-50 split in that it's more, a better example is not the individual only, which is where my brain tends to go to. It's really the family coverage. So when they buy family coverage, those premiums are going up 3.9%. Their out-of-pocket costs for buying family coverage is 3.9% higher. They will be paying more to get the same coverage, even as the board contribution is being increased. Premiums have gone up, board contributions gone up, but their out-of-pocket costs are also going up. And so we can see that.
I understand. I think I misunderstood the whole concept.
Yeah. So you can see here that they will be spending $120 or $270 more next year than they were this year for if they, in those examples. That's actual out-of-pocket difference for people who have elected family coverage.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Supple.
So we'll bring this back as a set of recommendations at the June 16th meeting.
Okay, board, I would now like a motion to return back to closed as we have some unfinished business.
So moved.
Mr. Glitch and Mr. Moore. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Ms. Lang, we just need your signature on the MOU for FISPA, please.
I'm working on it.
I know, you're okay. Watch yourself, I didn't have to. I know, you're kidding, you got this. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you just listen. I really do, that's respect. I think I should be able to come back and see you too. Good talk. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.
I don't know, let's try it next time. Does it start all the way down there?